Thanks
very much, Matt. Yes, hello and welcome everybody to the first practice session for the French Grand Prix this weekend. 12th time that the cars have raced at the Manicourt circuit. It's a little bit in the middle of nowhere in rural France, but John, it is a crucial weekend for Ferrari. The question is, are they going to go for it this weekend or wait until the German Grand Prix? Just 7 days away, of course, just a week away, where he could wrap it up there.
Well, I think that at the end of the day, as much as it would be a great emotional championship to win it in Germany at Hockenheim, at the brand new revised Hockenheim ring, get it wrapped up here this weekend if you can. But of course that also depends on Juan Pablo Montoya and Rubens Barrichello, because if either of those two drivers finish second to Michael Schumacher, it therefore means the championship, while it is in a sense all over, those two drivers could still win if Michael was not able to take part in the remaining part of the season. But let's say if Michael wins here on Sunday afternoon, then the championship is a done deal. But it's a big deal. It's all about tyres here at Manicourt. It's a very, very tough circuit on tyres. Both tyre companies have brought brand new tyres. In the case of Bridgestone, two new brand new sets of tyres. In the case of Michelin, one set has been used before, the other is a new set as well. And even Michelin have got a brand new intermediate tyre in the event that it may rain, and there has been rain forecast for Sunday, or certainly rain showers forecast for Sunday. And after the thrashing that they got at Silverstone just 2 weeks ago, when conditions suited intermediate tyres, Michelin need to respond, and they appear to have done so.
Yes, well, they certainly do have to do some work on that, and it's good to hear that they may have made some progress. Mark Webber is the first to come out on track. And immediately we're getting a little bit of the onboard radio. And just a reminder, if you're new to our coverage, this is a standard part of what we get to hear.
Green flag, the marshals are awake. Good speed. Sixth gear, slightly short of red. Warm the brakes up a little bit.
Mark giving a real commentary as he goes around on this outlap.
The hairpin. Radio check guys as well.
Checking the radio.
Very quick chicane, went up to speed. You're resurfacing out there. Delete Massa. Exiting out of here.
Well, there we are. Plenty of onboard communication with Mark Webber.
Very fast chicane here. Blind entry. A bit of curve there. Also over the top of this curve, went running very quickly. Difficult entry here. A lot of understeer mid corner and exit. Oversteer went running quickly as well. Coming back to finish the lap. Use a little bit more rev. Fast chicane, very quick and very important for lap time. In the pit lane.
There we are. Being talked around the opening. The opening lap there by Mark Webber in the Minardi. Winner in the Formula 3000 race here last year, in fact, so he knows the track well. And now bringing the Minardi back in just to make sure that everything is working as it should be. And a beautiful morning, absolutely stunning conditions. This is fairly typical for this part of France at this time of year.
Yes, it can in fact get very warm here. Over previous years we've had ambient temperatures up in the low 30s, track temperatures even getting as high as the low 40s. And of course Friday is a bit of a strange day as we see Pierre Dupasquet and some of the Michelin engineers in discussion. What happens at Manicourt is the circuit right now is probably pretty green. You need to put rubber down. There will be a very high level of degradation and tyre wear taking place. Whoa, and Juan Pablo Montoya just discovering how slippery it is out of Chateau d'Eau as he makes the run down under the bridge into the chicane. And well, Rubens Barrichello still chatting away, quite happy to wait out the first 15, maybe 20 minutes of this session, just get a little bit of rubber down. Teams will use up to 3 sets today, 3 sets of the 10 allocated sets.
Clutch one.
So Juan Pablo out of the car.
ABS one for the moment, and oil dip and sample.
Yeah, standard sort of checks going on here at Williams. Montoya was out of luck here in his only appearance in the French Grand Prix. That was here last year. Mechanical woes putting him out. But remember, it was his teammate Ralf Schumacher who took pole position here last season and had a reasonable battle with his brother Michael for the win. But it was Michael Schumacher who came through for another victory for Ferrari. And in fact, Michael's won here at Manicourt some 5 times in 8 occasions. Quite a record. And if he does it this weekend with Barrichello and Montoya not getting that second spot, of course he will become world champion for 2002. There, pit John, and plenty of a fair bit of activity going on, although we haven't actually seen either of the cars on track as yet.
No, it's still only a few minutes into the session, just under 5 minutes, so I'm sure no doubt arrows will be out. Again, further delay in leaving their headquarters in England to get here to Manicourt. They left at the last possible moment. They had to be here for 6 o'clock last night to make sure the cars were scrutineered. I doubt there would have been any extension as they enjoyed at Silverstone. Now, yeah, a little as we watch. This is the 180-degree corner, one of those corners that just goes on and on and on. The apex is very late there. You can see that red and white curbing indicating where the apex is, and that corner really sums up Manicourt. There's a lot of load in some of these corners. They go on and on and on. Coming now through the Imola chicane, very quick through there, and of course much more rise and fall than you actually will see on camera. Quite a challenge, and just driving around the circuit, let alone in a Grand Prix car, but in a road car, you can just imagine. I mean, the visibility, some of it is actually out of your eyesight. You're pointing upwards, then it's dipping down, then upwards, and a much more tricky and demanding circuit than it might appear from seeing it on screen.
That's right. It's quite a smooth circuit as well, isn't it? It doesn't really feature too much in the way of bumps, so that might suit one or two of the teams, perhaps looking at getting good mechanical grip without having to deal with banging the car over curbs or dealing with a bumpy surface. We're just looking into the Ferrari garage. There's plenty of support as ever for Ferrari. But down at Renault, of course, it's a big weekend for the Renault team here on French ground. And Nick Damon caught up just a moment ago with Pat Simmons at Renault.
Pat Simmons, we always hear that Manicourt's a bit different, it's very smooth. How does that affect the overall setup of the car?
Well, it is the smoothest circuit that we run on. And basically what that means is that you can run the car a lot lower and a lot stiffer. You don't have to handle the bumps so much, but having said that, there are a few places where you've got to ride the curbs, so you can't go to extremes.
Now, it's been tradition that in the past that Renault always brought something special to their home Grand Prix. They done it this year?
No, we're an international team. I think there's the same points available at every race, so we try just as hard wherever we are.
Are you happy with the development of the cars going forward? Do you think you're keeping pace with the other teams?
Yeah, I think so. You have to keep running to stay still in this business. We're certainly running. I hope we're not staying too still.
Thanks a lot.
Well, indeed, Pat Simmons, knowing they need a little bit of extra work to get onto the podium once again. Some interesting faces around this weekend. Ricardo Zonta is here, just sitting down on the steps there. So a number of drivers chasing possible opportunities, of course, to race in Formula One next season. And we'll just have to see how it all shakes out. A lot of rumour, but not a great deal of fact at the moment.
Zonta was talking with Alex Wurz, who of course currently is McLaren's test driver, but who has also been quite outspoken, saying, well, not outspoken, just saying, well, I almost guaranteed to be back in a Grand Prix car as a Grand Prix driver next year. And again, his name being associated with Toyota, I don't know whether that one's going to be a real one or not. But Wurz very anxious to, after 2 years of being test driver and having learned a great deal and matured probably also, looking forward to trying to become a Grand Prix driver once again.
Well, it's fairly quiet at the moment. In fact, all of the cars are sitting in the pits as we see the marshals preparing for a hot day out there. Hope they've got plenty of water. Now, Peter, I think you've got some more information for us as to how Michelin are approaching this French Grand Prix weekend.
Yes, Ben, well, just musing really on what you and John were talking about after Silverstone. Obviously, this is a huge weekend for Michelin as well. They're coming out of some bad races. It's the French Grand Prix, the French tyre company. They've got to do well. And two issues, I think, are significant. One is that Bridgestone still have a much rounder shoulder tyre, which enables them to run more negative camber when they need to, particularly at the front, of course. And they're very good over bumps and very good over curbs because of that. The Michelin is a much more square shoulder, stiffer construction tyre at its best on very smooth circuits, as Pat Simmons has just described Manicure. So the chances are the Michelin could go very well here. We saw that last year, of course. The second issue is what has been going on recently in the Michelin press releases. And like John, I share his total admiration for Pierre de Pasquier, the head of the Michelin Formula One tyre programme. But I must say that some of their recent comments have been extraordinary. And post-Silverstone, their comment was, we were not very happy with the performance of our tyres in the dry, but in the semi-wet and the wet, we think, look, we look very, very good, excluding the Ferraris, of course, which are a much better car. And I thought that was a rather simplistic and very odd approach to a race in which Bridgestone had a massively superior wet and intermediate tyre in the race. So quite what's going on there, I don't know. And one hopes that they're taking, behind the scenes, a much more realistic view of what is going on.
Yeah, good point, Peter. I agree with you on that one. It did seem a little strange. They did make the point that at one particular moment in the race, the tyre seemed quick, but rather ignoring the fact that the Bridgestone Intermediate was fast in everything.
Yeah, but that particular moment was when the track was drying, and there's no denying that the Michelin Intermediate is a very quick tyre for 1 or 2 laps. The problem it has, it just loses its grip after 2 or 3 laps. So if you get the Intermediate for 2 laps when the track's drying, it's all right. But you can't do 30 laps on it, as the Bridgestone runners did.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see what happens this weekend. Thanks for that, Peter. We've got a nice dry track to look at here at the moment. Beautiful conditions. Oh, Mark Webber goes a little wide, though.
Yes, a little bit coming down into the Adelaide hairpin, just overran it, and well, it's a this is Mark's 4th lap. He's just the first flying lap in reality. He's been in and out of the pits, and coming to terms with Manicure. Well, the first time in a Grand Prix car, of course, a lot more horsepower. You arrive at these corners substantially quicker than you do in a Formula 3000 car, and there he did the right thing. There's no pressure to try and get round the hairpin bend. He just ran straight, went deep into the corner, overshot it, turned around, and first flying lap. Nobody's going quickly at the minute. McNish, in fact, if anybody's interested, has done the fastest lap, which is of 7 minutes 2.593 seconds, and we think that may be eclipsed fairly shortly. I think it may well be. Look, some Australian fans here supporting Mark Webber, and he's been in France for a little while since the British Grand Prix, because he's spent a little bit of time following the Tour de France. He's been a big fan of Lance Armstrong over the years, and he had an opportunity to go along and see the riders in action. So he's spent a few days in France, now here near Nevers for the French Grand Prix. We're taking a ride on board now with Mika Salo in the Toyota. He was talking yesterday in the press conference, fairly confident, in fact very confident, that he'll be there again next year. He says next year's the 3rd year of his 3-year deal, and he's looking forward to increased competitiveness from Toyota. They've had a bit of a disappointing run just recently with reliability, and particularly this man, Alan McNish, of course. They had that awful clutch failure on the line at Silverstone, which meant he never even got to start the British Grand Prix. No, there was a very complex problem. It was partly launch control, clutch related, the whole thing. They tried to simulate it in a test last week. They think they finally got to the root of the problem, but huge disappointment for Alan McNish starting in his first British Grand Prix. Technically he did start, but of course the car never left the grid on that final parade lap. As Alan McNish comes down the fastest part of this Manicure circuit. Top speeds here, well, it's probably somewhere about 190 miles an hour. More interestingly, the fastest lap last year, pole position lap in qualifying for Ralf Schumacher, 1 minute 12.9, so that's going to be a benchmark time to keep an eye on. But going back to what we were talking about in last year's race, Ben, I think it was quite interesting that Juan Pablo Montoya opted to run for the harder of the 2 Michelin tyres that Michelin produced. And he used his experience, I think, in America by saying, well, I'm prepared to sacrifice maybe 1 or 2 positions on the grid to have something in the race which is going to be very durable and give me consistency, simply that. And it really worked for him. But what went wrong was that his own teammate Ralf Schumacher appeared to ignore. He said he didn't get the message, he had a radio problem, he says, and ultimately then Montoya retired with an engine problem, and it didn't really come to anything. But Montoya was really the only driver offering any real threat to Michael Schumacher up to lap 50 when Montoya then retired from the Grand Prix.
That's right, John. As you say, Ralph didn't get out of his way. It happened a couple of times, didn't it, at the same sort of part of the season with the British Grand Prix and here at the French Grand Prix as well. So there was a little bit of discussion going on within the Williams pit, particularly when they chose different strategies, as you say, with the tyres here in France, and in the UK, of course, they chose different pit stops as well. So something that they seem to sort out a little bit more effectively as the year went on. Looking down into the Sauber pit, Felipe Massa sitting down there at the moment, just waiting to come back out. Well, this weekend could be a great weekend for Ferrari, as we know, as Michael Schumacher looks to settle that 5th world title. Nick Damon's just been speaking to Ross Brawn.
Ross Brawn, a long waiting game today here?
A little bit, yes. I mean, the track took a little while to clean up, and it's quite a soft tyre here, so we don't want to use it up too soon. So we'll wait a little while until things settle down, probably 20 minutes or so.
Now, obviously, Michael has the chance to win the Grand Prix, the World Championship this weekend, but does he really want to win it in Hockenheim?
I don't think Michael has any true preference. I think he just would like to do it, and we're the same. I mean, hopefully it will come, and when it comes, be it here or whenever. So we're trying not to think about it.
Effectively, though, it is sewn up. Does that mean that all that massive resource Ferrari has is now pushing just for 2003 car?
No, there's some work still on this. We've got a new aero package this weekend. And obviously, any time of the season, you're splitting the resource between the future and the present, and undoubtedly we're now putting more effort into the future than the present. So, and I imagine all the teams down the pit lane are now putting efforts into the future, so it's normal.
That's not
Well,
it will take a while.
just listening to Mika Salo here, he's just had a very frightening looking moment with Takuma Sato out at the Imola chicane, very fast chicane, and Sato didn't seem to be aware that he was there at all.
Well, he was absolutely unaware. I mean, the Imola chicane, as I was explaining at the top of the show, in fact, it's much more of a dub up and over a roller coaster ride, really, and he was completely oblivious to the fact that Mika Salo was on a flying lap, and Salo ran up to the back of him. Salo had to get right off track, and it was, you know, a moment where quite easily there could have been an incident through somebody's inattention and not paying. Oh, there we see, in fact, there's damage. Look at the steering arm in that car he touched. That is unbelievable. It's Mika Salo's Toyota. Contact with Takuma Sato.
Let's take another look at what happened there. He's back into the pits, coming back out onto the track at the moment in the Jordan. We've got Eddie Irvine on track currently, going through that fast chicane. And of course, Jaguar very anxious to see whether the extra testing they've done since Silverstone held at Monza has made the difference to this new package of aerodynamics they've put on the car. But let's take a look back now at what happened a moment ago between Mika Salo and Takuma Sato, and it was just going up through that fast chicane. Irvine there, you see, by the way, fastest at this point with just a was the moment as Sato just was going fairly slowly and Salo had to drive right off there. That was the contact.
Contact, right front, left rear contact. We saw that in Silverstone with Barrichello and Montoya. No damage there, but in this instance there was sufficient contact that steering arm was bent, and I mean, Mika Salo was very unhappy. We had views of it just off camera while we were on one of those other interviews with Ross Brawn. And Salo, I mean, he will go down and have a word with Takuma Sato, who no doubt will get down on his hands, and he's, oh so sorry, I didn't mean it, as the Japanese are so prone to do.
Well, yes, he has got to apologise, I think, for that one, because Sato really was cruising round, not aware somebody was coming up quickly behind him, but hopefully not too much damage done as the Jaguars continue to see what they can do with their cars. The De La Rosa and Irvine putting in some laps early on in this session, and I suppose that's understandable, bearing in mind how much work they're trying to put in with this new package. Of course, they had a big accident, didn't they, John, with James Courtney in that test at Monza.
Courtney was doing one of his sort of junior testing driver roles, coming down into the Ascari chicane. That's the third chicane at Monza. It's the best of the three chicanes. Absolutely superb corner. Had a rear suspension failure at about 200 miles an hour. And when that happens, and Eddie Irvine, we saw that happen to Eddie Irvine in Monaco, on screen live on F1 Digital Plus. Urban claims he had another one in testing more recently, and it was just simply the car went out of control, slammed into the barrier at the end of the runoff area, which at that point is of course still a gravel. No doubt the car just bumped across it, hit the barrier, and literally I think there was little left of the car except the bare carbon fibre monocoque and the engine and gearbox. And James Courtney was really heavily shaken and stirred, concussion, initially lost feeling in his right hand side, which caused him a state of panic, understandably. But James is getting better, and he hopes to be back in his Formula 3 car very shortly and continue his battle in this year's British Formula 3 Championship.
That's right, yes, James currently leading the British Formula 3 Championship. Peter, I think you had some more information on what was a fairly scary accident for him at Monza.
Well, yes, very graphically described by John there, but in his own words, James said that he was doing about 190 miles an hour. He touched the brakes, and basically the left rear wheel just went straight past him at that point. He's a complete passenger. And I think one of the most alarming aspects of the whole thing was that apparently the Jaguar engineers are not terribly surprised that the whole thing happened, which is amazing. The last time James tested the Jaguar, I understand, the rear wing fell off the car as he's going into bridge at Silverstone. So the guy's brave, and let's hope he does very well this weekend in Formula 3.
Thanks very much, Peter. Well, tough baptism for Courtney as he gets his first experience of Formula 1 in testing conditions. This session continuing at the moment. It is the first free practice session for the French Grand Prix at Manicourt. You're watching it on Sky Digital Plus. We're watching the Saubers out there at the moment as well. The Ferraris have taken it very easily. They haven't done anything at all. Michael Schumacher is now looking as though he might be ready to come out on track. We heard from Ross Brawn that there's no panic. Temperature change makes a big difference to track conditions as well, doesn't it, here, John?
Yeah, I mean, you could start as we're doing here, because it's 11 o'clock in France, but if you started at 9 o'clock, as teams would do if they were testing, didn't change the car at all, and ran it through the day, the only change would be, of course, changing tyres for tyre wear. You would go through every range of extreme a driver will experience in a Grand Prix car, from understeer to oversteer to total frustration, completely undrivable. The car's a heap of you-know-what. And that's just simply down to how the temperature rise and drop affects the performance of the tyres. Coming through here, this is one of the best corners in the circuit. This is a long Estoril corner. A driver will battle understeer, but eventually it'll turn to oversteer, then it'll come back to understeer. You're always chasing your tail, and in fact, as Ross Brawn was mentioning about Ferrari and sitting out the first 20 minutes, they don't want to go out and run when the track's very green. They don't have too much tyre wear, too much tyre degradation. But that's what you will get, and in fact, as a consequence of that, against the normal tide of a Friday morning at any regular Grand Prix circuit, teams may not actually run with quite the high fuel loads that they would anticipate doing. And look at Montoya, down in 180-degree corner, getting it all wrong, missing the apex, now accelerating up, coming up. Watch through the similar chicane, get some feel for what it's like.
Yeah, that's a quick corner indeed through there. And you could hear him feathering the throttle. He wasn't able to
actually downshifted forward, in fact. He went down a gear, which I was surprised at, because that would indicate to me that there's not an awful lot of grip out there, and you can see the way Montoya is having to work really hard at the steering wheel. Again, because of the nature of the circuit, it is a very smooth circuit. It's pretty much bump free. It does allow the cars to run, as we heard mentioned earlier, slightly stiffer than normal, to really try and pick up on the aerodynamics of the car. The stiffer you can run the car, theoretically, the more efficient the aerodynamics will be. There is the lock-up we saw in that 180-degree corner. Runs wide, can't get the back of the car in, and just really deciding, well, it's another lap, another learning course. He still goes quickest, by the way, at a 1:15.271, but nonetheless, in fact, actually, just interesting, that lap is now 0.8 of a second faster than 2001's race lap last year.
Well, we're riding on board with Ralf Schumacher at the moment, so a quick look through the chicane as he comes round to complete another lap, and let's just see whether this compares with the time that Montoya's done already across the line, 15.9 compared to 15.2. So both Williams are running well, first and second fastest, but I think we can hear a bit more about what happened to Mika Salo in that incident with Takuma Sato, because Nick Damon has caught up with the Finn.
Mika Salo, bit of a coming together with Takuma Sato. What happened there?
Well, it looked like he's going the way, giving me away and going the right side, and suddenly he chopped across, and there's nothing I could do. I tried to cut the chicane from the inside a little bit, but he just came in, and I just touched him, and I have some damage on my front now.
How long to repair, do they know?
No, it's not long.
Thanks a lot, Mika.
Fairly straightforward steering arm to replace, and normally they've got those all set up ready so that they shouldn't even need to track the car up. Should be able to bolt it straight on and send him straight back out into the session.
Yes, but because you get an impact like that, that's an unnatural load in a suspension in a car. They will probably go around the entire car to see if there's any other potential damage. And just listening to what we were talking about with all the problems that Jaguar have had in testing, where there have been failures in suspension, the last thing you want is a suspension failure coming here. For example, going through the Grand Courbe, it's the flat-out left-hander that leads into the Estoril corner, entering at about 175 miles an hour. You do not want a failure of your front suspension. And there we see a spinner. That's Alex Young, we think. Yes, it is. That's coming out of that final tight hairpin bend onto start-finish straight.
So riding on board now with David Coulthard, and Coulthard has just set the fastest mid-sector time in the McLaren Mercedes. Former winner of this Grand Prix himself, one of his best wins he always puts it down to. That was in 2000. He passed Michael Schumacher after the two of them had a fairly major dice for a while, and finally he fought his way past the Ferrari and went on to take victory. And look, he's gone fastest overall here, just under 0.2 of a second faster than Montoya's time.
This is coming into Estoril corner. We've just gone back to the pit lane. But the view of David Coulthard through Grand Courbe, I mean, it's a big commitment to get it flat. And then you've got to get the car slowed down to turn right through Estoril. And again, Estoril, very much like the Imola chicane, well, in relative terms, elevation change, this sort of roller coaster, big dipper effect. You go into it, big compression, big lateral G loads. The car, of course, fighting for balance, fighting for grip. As once again Coulthard comes through. And down into, that was the Nürburgring chicane, or left-right, and then into 180, and the climb back. And watch Coulthard to see how many laps he does on this run. Currently Coulthard this is his 5th lap, so his first flying lap was effectively the quickest lap of the day to date, and well, he's just fractionally down, so he'll complete this lap, and I suspect come in at the end what will be his 6th lap.
Yes, let's just watch him down through the chicane here. Uses a little bit of curb, but not too much. With the cars being run more stiffly, they certainly react. In fact, he stays out there and completes the lap. It's 0.4 of a second slower than his previous best.
Just watching Coulthard as he turned in, you could see the back end was coming around. Just suddenly he had to just get the lock on to control the car.
Forwards, yeah? And then we can take the wing off again to do the longer run. Just get a feeling for whether this wing is worth playing with tomorrow, yeah? The other thing is high-speed corners. The car is understeer, so I thought we need to take some throwing out for the entry, but it's not. I don't think it's error. I think it's more mechanical problem. It's like you brake and it's fine, and as soon as the engine braking increases, it's like pulling a handbrake. But you still get quite out of mid-corner understeer.
Well, some good feedback from Montoya once again.
Well, I have to say, I listened to it, and I hope his engineers are interpreting what Juan Pablo says. Sometimes he has so much information, and this problem of the aero, the understeer on the one hand, but on other corners you've got oversteer. We saw with Coulthard oversteer and that low-speed corners, but he guaranteed would have understeer through Estoril and some of the higher speed corners. And this is the thing, you're always chasing your tail on this racetrack. Every single lap you'll come in with a different sort of sense of what the car is doing.
Michael Schumacher on track and already fast. He set the fastest first sector time, and the Ferraris now making their presence felt once again. Barrichello's already set one time, he's gone up to 13th. Meanwhile, Jenson Button has put in a time that sees him go 4th fastest. So we've got Coulthard, Montoya, Ralf Schumacher, then Button, Irvine, De La Rosa, top 6 so far. That's about to be changed, however, as Michael Schumacher comes through the chicane, bounces over the curb a little bit into the last corner, Lycée. Just a bit of correction through there, over the line, and he goes 2nd fastest to David Coulthard.
And Jenson Button just behind him. But Rubens Barrichello likewise. Here's Barrichello, he's gone 5th quickest, and all of a sudden we're now just coming up almost to the halfway stage, 32 minutes remaining, and we're going to see some more professional work going on. McLaren, Ferrari, Williams, those are your top 3 teams, and again, we don't know which tyre company is going to have the advantage here. It's too early to say, because tyre performance on a Friday will not relate to what we will see in Sunday's Grand Prix.
That's right, it could be very, very different indeed, and everyone chasing their tails a little bit as they get the cars set up for this very specialised track. Remember some years ago when, of course, Ligier used to be based here, Ligier which then later became Prost, and it's sad to think, of course, that Prost not here at the French Grand Prix this year after they folded over the winter months. But Ligier always had something special to offer here. They were based at the track and they seemed to be able to read those changing conditions, the changing temperatures, and very accurately indeed. That was interesting, just listening to Raikkonen.
Yeah, Raikkonen had to get out of the throttle because he was running out of road before he got to the exit of the corner, so he checked it by lifting off the throttle. And Alex Wurz, who's done many, many miles testing around pretty much every circuit in Europe, including Paul Ricard, where the McLaren had a closed test last week, had a car damaged. Kimi Raikkonen ran over what looked to be a fairly innocuous curb, but did a substantial amount of damage to that car. That car had to be returned back to the Woking base. They also apparently had an engine failure. So while it may have been satisfactory in terms of development, it wasn't a trouble-free test for the Woking-based McLaren team.
There's the view from on board, looking at his right front wheel, looking from the front wing there. Just on the nose cone this camera is mounted. That's out of the last corner. You can see a bit of steering activity. Listen to the engine here as he heads down. Well, in fact, we switch, have a quick look as he comes through and into the last corner. In fact, I think we were on board with David there rather than with Kimi. Kimi now coming out of that last corner and now coming through the left-hander, the Grand Courbe, and up towards the right-hander at Estoril. That's the fast section where we saw him have to lift off earlier. It looks like Mika's car might be ready for him to come back out.
I think Mika Salo probably lost best part of 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. That incident very early on in the session when Takuma Sato was still clearing the cobwebs out of his eyes, did not know that Sato was there, and Salo was there and had to, Salo that is, take avoiding action, still resulted in a collision with Takuma Sato. And but I don't think it's not going to hurt Toyota or Salo very much. In fact, when he goes back out on track, he may find a racetrack that's a little bit more inviting than it was when he was out very early in this session. And Rubens Barrichello now just once again emphasises what a good car this Ferrari is and what a stunning job Barrichello's doing for Ferrari this year.
He is. He's had a hat-trick of third-place finishes here at Manicourt over the last few years, so he's hoping to move up, perhaps to second, or even take the win for the French Grand Prix this year. We're looking at Raikkonen now. Coulthard came through a second ago, as we saw. He's still second fastest, and Raikkonen now coming through, both of them putting in a few laps together, putting a little run together. That keeps Raikkonen in 6th place as we check out the Sauber of Nick Heidfeld through that very rapid and fast and sweeping right-hander Estoril.
Yeah, you could see the back end of the Sauber, just the grip not quite there, still pushing very hard. Then nevertheless, you must do this. You've got to use every lap, use all the information available, but not the level of maybe confidence from a car in this relatively early stage of the first practice session. Nevertheless, Barrichello's fastest lap is now about 2 seconds and a few hundredths slower than last year's pole, and I would expect to see towards the end of the second session, which would be from 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock local time in France, where cars will probably get down pretty much near to that 1 minute 12.989 that Ralf Schumacher secured pole position for last year's Grand Prix with.
That's right. Well, we've just seen Heidfeld through that incredibly fast change of direction at the Imola chicane. Fantastic view through there of the car working one way then the other, as you say, John, through that roller coaster section. Now coming out of the last corner, this puts him into 10th place.
And just looking at the Sauber, to me there's revised aerodynamics on the, is that a chimney exhaust for the radiators that they're using? There's something looks slightly different there. It's difficult to tell whether that's been something that I've missed or has been on before, but to me it looks brand new. There's Frank Williams in the garage. There's a conversation going on, and just waiting to see when Juan Pablo Montoya is going to come back out on track, and it looks pretty imminent because that's the engine being fired up. Juan Pablo probably has had a few changes, some of which are aerodynamic. We heard that a little earlier, where they were going to take an aerodynamic run with slightly lower wing, slower air downforce, to see what that gives them in terms of information. It's important here in the Grand Prix itself to be quick down the straight. Nevertheless, if you can't then match that sort of level of performance around the tighter parts of the track. It's all about balance, and I think this circuit of all in the 17 race calendar, if you look for one quality in a race car, it's got to be balance.
Well, the Ferraris are back in now. Barrichello fastest for Ferrari, Coulthard second, Michael Schumacher third, Montoya fourth. Ralf Schumacher there we're looking at fifth fastest, Kimi Raikkonen sixth, and then Jenson Button seventh. And Davy Ryan of McLaren just asking, I think, some of the Ferrari guys to move something, because it's causing a little bit of a blockage to them getting their cars in and out of the garage.
Well, Davy Ryan and the Ferrari engineers, they all meet up and they're all mates, but of course when it comes down to the business end of the deal, any impediment to the team's operation, then Jordan looking slightly better, and maybe that's a different angle. Just there's the rear view of the Sauber just a couple of laps ago, where you could see it sort of moving outwards. Fisichella looking quite well balanced through the exit of that long Estoril corner. So now the return inner link in this circuit that sort of twines itself, it's a bit like a snake, it sort of entwines itself around itself, sliding through the Nürburgring, then down into this 180-degree. Well, he tried to hug it all the way around, but just didn't have the bite to do it. And the car then drifted out in the middle and exited the corner. Watch him up through the Imola chicane.
Yeah, this is the fast one. Oh, look at that, very quick through there, but keeps it all together. But look at the split time, it's not very fast compared to the Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello. Jordan, of course, having enjoyed victory here at Manicourt back in 1999, courtesy of Heinz-Harald Frentzen in some pretty atrocious weather conditions. They've never qualified better than fifth on this track, and Fisichella out to make up for what has been a couple of disappointing outings after a very strong run that he had going earlier on in the season.
So this is up at the Chateau d'Eau. This is the oversteer. Well, that just shows you. Even this is on Fisichella's. Let's have a look and see. 9th lap already. Tire grip just ebbing away. Now that will gradually improve as the session goes on, as more rubber goes down, and you can never ever underestimate just what tyres are going to give you here.
Just looking at the times in these early stages of the morning free practice, but a quick point that I think we do need to make is the fact that neither Arrows has been on track yet. Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Enrique Bernoldi, the only two cars not to have taken to the track. So far, no Arrows on track. Whether there are still discussions going on, Walkinshaw made the point that the engines had been paid for. Peter, I think you might have more info for us. Peter, do you have any more information on that Arrows situation for us?
Well, I've just been chatting to the media department of the Arrows team. They said they're definitely not running this morning, but no further information. But I'm with Enrique here. Enrique, sad to see you in a T-shirt. Everybody else is out there. What's your understanding at the moment of the situation?
Yeah, for me it's a very bad feeling to be here and not to be listening to all the cars going around, and I'm just here sitting around and waiting. Well, what I've been told is that regarding the team there is no problems like regarding engines or any technical department. It's just there is a problem between in the team between some shareholders, which they are not agreed in some agreement, which I don't know what it is. And unfortunately, so far we don't know if we are racing or not.
Well, we hope you are. You had a great looking race at Silverstone, right up there for a while. What actually caused your retirement there?
Yeah, it was a drive shaft. It was probably Silverstone was my best race. I came up from very far back and I was running up to 6th position. And it's sad to be seeing that things are progressing and that I'm improving and getting better results and not to be allowed to race.
Well, we hope to talk to Tom Walkinshaw in due course. Obviously, when he's got something to say, we'll be there. But at the moment, sad scene at Orange Arrows.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yes, well, it's good to hear from Enrique, but we'd much rather see him in a crash helmet and out in the car as we're watching Montoya and Ralf Schumacher. Both the Williams are on circuit again as this first free practice session works its way through. Just 22.5 minutes to go in this first session on track at Manicourt this weekend, and Montoya putting together the laps as they look at the time that's been set by Rubens Barrichello, fastest so far.
And again, up at Eau Rouge, you can see Montoya turns in, then the back just breaks away, snaps away, and of course he's got to get out of the throttle, and his time a second down in Barrichello. Inevitably, the more miles you do on one of these sets of tyres, then you're going to get this drop off in performance and grip. And in fact, coming out of this corner now into this very quick left hand of the Grand Curve, Eddie Irvine and Jaguar is saying, I can barely go through there flat out, which is normally you'd even think about going there flat out. So even Jaguar is struggling in a part of the racetrack which is absolutely flat.
Yeah, it certainly should be. We're watching Jenson Button now, as well, we've already been talking about his future and where he's going to end up next year. Still unclear, but still uncertain. Difficult for a Formula One driver sometimes to be able to put that all out of his mind, which is what he needs to do now, and focus on getting this car to get around the track as quickly as possible and look for a decent result on Sunday afternoon. Currently 7th fastest.
Yeah, difficult time in coming into a Grand Prix, and I mean, he may know a lot more than the public are being made aware of, and until the announcement from Renault as to who they're choosing to drive in their two cars for 2003 and there onwards. But so the signals are pretty much that Jenson may be looking elsewhere. He's visited Jaguar, visited Sauber, neither of which would be, to me, the ideal position for him, though Sauber clearly a very strong team indeed. But I just can't quite see Jenson fitting into a team that is a very, very uniquely Swiss-based and Swiss personality-driven team. Nick Heidfeld fits in pretty well. He's German-speaking. Felipe Massa, well, he may be the driver that Button would be replacing. So ideally, I would like to see Jenson Button in a British-based team, somewhere where he can make a contribution and really look to a solid 2 years with, and not really just think about it as a place to tread water.
Absolutely, quite agree with you, John, there. He's got to try and build with a team, and hopefully be with a team that is potentially looking at Grand Prix victories. You always sort of wonder a little bit with Sauber that the only way they're really ever likely to win a Grand Prix is through luck. They're a strong team, I'm not saying they're not, but of course they're never going to have the very best from Ferrari in terms of engines, because they're going to keep that for themselves. Well, Jenson Button currently putting together a series of laps. He's 7th fastest, stays 7th for the moment, as a few changes going on down there in the Ferrari pit, perhaps a rear wing change. We see them do that quite often this year, making a rear wing change rather than just adjusting the flaps on the rear wing. They'll simply remove one and put another one on there, and that often seems to be the way they tweak the handling during a session.
Well, I think it's easier simply just to do that, because they're quite complex, the elements on that wing, and to measure it accurately if you've got a model preset. So you have them just sitting there and just take one off, put another one on. And of course also there is a factor that if you make a wing that is multi-adjustable, you therefore actually put more weight into it because you've got more nuts, more bolts. And you think, hold on a second, what does a nut and bolt weigh? Well, if you take that philosophy and follow it the whole way through your car, you can save a tangible amount of weight. And for Ferrari, where let's say the budgets are probably bigger than anybody else's in the field, probably in fact Ferrari's budget is about that of everybody outside of Williams and McLaren, then you imagine that they can have that luxury to have wings that have simply got adjustments in them, and it's quicker to just to change the wing than start adjusting the wing and pay the penalty of additional weight and also finger trouble, which sometimes does happen.
Well, Nick Heidfeld now on roll. He gets it very crossed up coming into the 180-degree corner. Had to apply lots of correction. Let's just watch him now. This is the onboard as we head up towards that fast chicane, and we're actually going to have a look from the outside as the car works hard through there. Not quite as quick through there perhaps as he was earlier on. Important running, although again under braking the back end seems to be breaking away.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cars probably the cars are fairly stiff, and in these low speed corners the aerodynamic effect of course is a lot less, so the teams are working on the higher speed parts of the track, where with the slightly lower, maybe slightly stiffer setup, where there's less roll, less sort of ease of getting into a corner, any sort of loss of grip will tend to be fairly abrupt.
Didn't sound like there's any problem being flapped out through the left-hander for Heidfeld. The right-hander is the one you have to work out a little harder. There was a big accident for Villeneuve there some years ago in qualifying, absolutely destroyed his car up on the outside of that bend. We've seen that in the past several times. And
to Villeneuve's credit, he never lifted. He never, even when he was in trouble, he never lifted.
Absolutely. Well, that's a characteristic, I think, of Jacques Villeneuve's driving, isn't it? That he's flat out fully committed, whatever's going on. David Coulthard, currently second fastest to the Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello, so it's been a promising start for the McLaren driver, but it is early days here on the Friday morning as McLaren try and get points once again from the French Grand Prix. Silverstone was a complete disaster from their point of view. Those pit stops, the choice of which tyres to run, particularly for David, miscommunications, and even problems apparently for Ron Dennis with our feed, causing problems for the communication between him and the drivers. So all sorts of things were going wrong at Silverstone. They've got to put that behind them, concentrate here on the French Grand Prix.
Yes, in fact, it was a pretty big low point. I think the last time they had a low point of that magnitude was at the Nürburgring in 1995. And when things go wrong for a team, well, in a team like McLaren or Ferrari or Williams, it inevitably goes wrong big time. And look, there, Felipe Massa once again displaying the kind of car control skills that Nick Damon enjoyed in that Subaru Impreza ride that he had a little bit earlier in the week. And the irrepressible Brazilian just seems to have this ability to let a Formula One car, get so out of shape that he gets it back. Not always, but most times.
Yes, most times. He does have fantastic car control, doesn't he? Using quite a lot of curve coming out of Estoril. Doesn't want to go too wide there, otherwise, of course, the bottom of the car, the plank, will bottom out. The wheels come off the ground effectively, and you have no control at all, no matter what your reactions are like. Through the Adelaide hairpin, uses a little bit of curve there on the exit, and then accelerates. Now up towards this Nürburgring right-left flick. Not quite as dramatic as the one on the other side of the track. And now into the 180. Let's see the braking. That looks neat and tidy.
Yeah, he got it into the corner again. There was that slight hint of the back end wanting to come out, but nonetheless Massa was able to hold line and keep the throttle, then pick up the power. Again, struggling slightly through Imola. Again, watch coming through. See the understeer he has, mid-corner understeer. Nothing you can do about that. The track will come to you. You could try and adjust that out of the car, and the next time you go out, you discover you made far too much adjustment. You have to go all the way back and start again. So
Felipe Massa comes around, completes the lap, some 2.4 seconds slower than Rubens Barrichello's best to date. Let's just watch him here as he continues round. We'll actually have a quick look here at Olivier Panis in the BAR Honda. A huge boost to the team, scoring points for both cars at Silverstone, and now they can concentrate on building on that progress that has been made this year. They've made a lot of aerodynamic revisions, of course. As Peter told us earlier, Honda are producing another upgrade for qualifying and for the race here, which they expect the drivers to notice a decent difference from. So BAR Honda's fortunes perhaps on the upturn, but the weather conditions at Silverstone certainly helped them, and they were using, of course, that very helpful Bridgestone intermediate tyre.
Yeah.
with Barrichello taking a victory as well in that, the Nürburgring, starting off the season with the 2001 chassis, but ever since the 2002 has come along, it's been virtually unbeatable. Not quite perhaps, but virtually unbeatable, and we're watching Michael Schumacher at work here.
And up at Chateau again with the same problem. Virtually every car we've ridden on board with today, and there's it's Mark Webber in fact down, and that's coming out of the Grand Courbe into Estoril, so he's been over the gravel, and they're just probably going to replay, but if you turn left, he's gone wide, he's gone on the gravel. A yellow flag situation for Michael Schumacher, he's going to slow down, and there Mark able to drive back. Now that gravel to me is on gravel, like it's probably more like rocks.
Okay, Mark, in this lap, mate, in this.
Gravel is not designed to do that.
No, well, they were ready to come and pick him up, but in fact he managed to get it going. Paul Stoddart keeping a close eye on what's going on. They had a disappointing time at Silverstone, and of course Alex Young didn't even make it into the race, failing to qualify. Young has raced here in the past in Formula Renault, somewhat different proposition to racing a Formula 1 car here, but he reckons that he should be in much better shape to make the grid this time, and has been doing a lot of work with the team, with his race engineer, discussing what they need to look at to make sure that he gets on the grid. Currently he is slowest of the cars that have been out. He's done 17 laps, he's done a 1:21.8, that compares to 1:18.2 for his teammate Mark Webber, so some 3.5 seconds slower.
I just wonder, we just saw the end of that spin, we didn't see it in the beginning there, Mark. Now this is the problem of gravel, you drive into it, you drive out of it, you shed gravel all over the racetrack. This is coming down into the Adelaide hairpin bend, so not quite sure where it started to go wrong for Mark Webber, but we did see the conclusion of that spin. Pretty high speed by the looks of it too.
So it's Ferrari's first and third at the moment. Barrichello and Michael Schumacher sandwiching David Coulthard. Montoya then fourth, ahead of Ralf Schumacher. Raikkonen is sixth fastest. Button seventh, Irvine eighth, De La Rosa ninth, and Takuma Sato 10th, ahead of his teammate Fisichella 11th. Then it's Heidfeld, Trulli, Massa's down in 14th place, learning the track here today. It's the first time for Felipe on the Manicourt circuit. Behind Massa is Panis, then Salo and McNish 17th. Then it's Villeneuve 18th, and then we have Mark Webber and Alex Young. And as we've already mentioned, the Arrows making no appearance here this morning.
And David Coulthard looks particularly purposeful coming through those two very, very quick corners. Estoril leads on to this long, quickest part of the circuit, the straight. Well, there we're getting an idea of some of the top speeds. 3:06 for Michael, 2:97 for Coulthard. Current speed virtually the same, indicating that the McLaren are having to run, and Barrichello's had an off. Rubens Barrichello, that's at the Nürburgring, that very quick right-left flick-flack, and in fact coming into the 180. So Barrichello getting caught out by a lack of grip. But interesting that the McLaren somewhat 9 kilometres down on Ferrari now, depending on what downforce. Rubens gets it wrong here. No, he's out of the Nürburgring, coming into the 180, and again.
Yeah, he seems to lock that left front rear as well. Yeah, both
just
left
strange. It's a very wispy looking sort of lock up, and goes on to that new gravel on the outside. The new tarmac on the outside of what used to be a gravel trap. This is becoming a bigger feature around most of the Grand Prix circuits of the world.
Yes, and it seems to be working well at the moment. Positive reaction, and so what we've seen so far this season, I have to say, it has been a good introduction. They've painted it in a few places here as well. I think that helps, because otherwise you tend to get vast areas of tarmac. But the Manicourt track being very well presented here today.
Starting to roll and
well, they've obviously...
When Ted sees that locking, mate, on the front, that's because we're getting a lot of pushing.
Webber just explaining some of the stuff that's gone on as they try and clean it out for all the gravel.
Yeah, and very influenced, Australian influenced team, mate here and mate there. So Mark gets back to the pits, gets out of the car as we go back to David Coulthard. Let's see whether the McLaren is suffering from that sudden flick oversteer up in the tight right-hander Chateau, which follows on through this very quick Imola Esses. Coulthard comes in, car looks reasonably good, watch his hands, it looks pretty well balanced through there.
Yes, now we have the view looking straight back into his visor, although he is running the fairly darkly tinted visor, so we don't get to see David's eyes, I'm afraid. But in this bright sunshine, I'm not surprised he's running the darker one.
And also the visor is slightly open just to let a little bit of more air get in.
You can hear the down changes required as he goes into the right-hander at Estoril, coming into there in 6th or 7th gear and dropping down to 4th gear as they enter the right-hander and then onto the long straight. Here's his teammate Kimi Räikkönen, and currently 6th fastest, the Finn, who was superb in the damp conditions at Silverstone. It was a great shame that it didn't come together for him, because he was catchy, caught Michael Schumacher when that first little bit of rain came down, then they all headed into the pits, and then of course it didn't really work out from that point on for Räikkönen. But a very, very impressive season this year, even if he has been affected by a lot of unreliability.
Indeed he has, but just watching both Coulthard and Räikkönen, the McLaren chassis looking pretty good, and bearing in mind everybody's still, I believe, on their original set of tyres, so Räikkönen now this is his 11th lap. David Coulthard has completed 10 laps. Okay, well, there you see the problem. You turn in, the back end gets away. You can't just pull the wheel, make the front dive into the corner, because the back isn't going to come with you.
There he goes through that fast chicane. You could just see the sparks as the bottom of the chassis grounds out just a little bit there, and that's despite running a very stiff suspension. But of course it's so fast, that section, they're getting sort of maximum download going through that, and that corresponds to maybe 2.5 times the weight of the car, pushing the car down onto the road. That's the aerodynamic downforce that they're trying to generate, and with that downforce, of course, it squashes the car onto the road, and that's why you see the bottom of the car hitting the tarmac.
Well, watch for the big opposite lock coming on. Oh, there she goes. That's so predictable. Now he locks it up, he just sort of overruns into that final lacy corner across top finish line. I mean, it's real frustration for a driver, because they hate driving racing cars that are unbalanced, and you never know quite what you're going to get. Juan Pablo Montoya still 4th quickest, and he's now completed 7 laps, so between them, the two Williams drivers outside of Takuma Sato and Nick Heidfeld and Felipe Massa have just about done the most laps. Alex Young has done 20 as well, so they're sort of the top end of the cars that have done the majority of laps here this morning, with just over 3.25 minutes remaining.
Watching Giancarlo Fisichella here, yeah, he's down in 11th place behind his teammate Sato 10th. Italian to have always had a decent result somewhere along the line at most of the tracks that they go to throughout the season, but it's never quite come together for him here. A little wide in, although he does tuck it in neatly on the exit of the 180-degree corner. And Jordan hoping that they can get back to their points scoring run that he had going between Austria and Canada, which ended, of course, really by that rather silly accident between the two cars at the first corner at the Nürburgring.
Yes, and of course they didn't score points at Silverstone, their home Grand Prix, a disappointment as well, because they were on the right tyre for the conditions, and they led in their arch rivals BAR, not just one car but both. BAR's getting 4th and 5th places, scooping up 5 points in one race to the 6 points that Jordan have accumulated over 3 races with their 3 5th places.
Yes, so suddenly it's a close battle again in the Constructors' Championship between the two Honda-powered cars, just the 1 point between the two teams. Ferrari, of course, dominating that Constructors' battle at the moment on 118 points now, nearly double the amount that Williams has. They're on 61 points, but they're reasonably clear of McLaren, who are on 37 points. The Constructors' battle still up for grabs. Ferrari might be looking at wrapping the Drivers' title up, but they're not quite ready to wrap the Constructors' title up. I'm sure it will come their way as we go through the season, however. On board here with Olivier Panis, just 2 minutes to go in this session. Sorry, with Jacques Villeneuve, just 2 minutes to go in this session, this first session of free practice. Michael Schumacher, though, beat that checkered flag, and I wonder whether he's going to put in a quick lap to finish things off here. We'll wait and see. Ralf Schumacher's on a slightly improving lap himself at the moment. Michael heading down towards the first checkpoint, but off goes Villeneuve. So Jacques has taken a trip across the gravel, and that's actually down at the chicane as well, where we saw Fisichella a moment ago. Jacques done it a little more properly.
Yes, he managed, really beached in the gravel. He's gone off backwards. In fact, he went off slightly different to Fisichella, went off and managed to drive straight through. Villeneuve backed into the gravel, but it doesn't really matter. The session is now finished, but it'll take again a few minutes for that car to be removed from the gravel, get back into the pits for the team to jack it up, take the underbody off, clean it all out. Only an hour between these sessions, so it'll be a hard work for the BAR team as we go back with Michael Schumacher again struggling for bite and grip off Chateau d'Eau.
So he comes into the yellow flag area. The yellow box appears on our screen to indicate that he'll have the yellow light on in the car, that he'll be coming around. It's interesting, decides to complete the lap. He's got to come in next time, but of course he had beaten the checkered flag. It still might be useful for him to just feel what the car's doing on the several key areas of the track. Let's just ride with him. Looks like he's not pushing that hard at the moment. This is the replay of what happened to Jacques.
Yes, coming in, I suspect the back end under brakes. Oh, and he clipped the curb. He just clobbered the curb and it just got into a hop, skip and a jump, and traction was lost, grip was gone. There you see the other view of it, and that was just really down to Jacques Villeneuve, that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, bouncing over the curb pretty heavily, wasn't he? And of course, with the cars being run stiffer here, because it tends to be a smoother surface, if you do touch the curbs, you're likely to be in more trouble here than you are perhaps at a track where you tend to set the suspension to allow that, jumping over some of the curbs at the chicanes. Here, you've got to avoid it, and Villeneuve paying the penalty there. Yeah. So the first session comes to its conclusion with Barrichello fastest for Ferrari. Well, no great surprise there, I suppose. Only a few thousandths faster than David Coulthard in the McLaren Mercedes. Michael Schumacher third fastest, and then Juan Pablo Montoya in the Williams fourth, ahead of his teammate Ralf Schumacher. Kimi Raikkonen sixth in the second McLaren, and then Jenson Button seventh fastest, so reasonable effort for the Renault driver. De La Rosa just behind Irvine. They're 8th and 9th as Jacques makes his way back. Of course, it's most embarrassing place to go off here at Manicourt, because you're right in front of the pits and they can all see exactly what you've done wrong. Never mind, he can't get into the pits now either because of all these screens that they've got at this part of the track.
Yeah, he's having to scrabble through one of the access gaps, which is to let marshals, if they need to, get to the track, but not much room, and slips through, walks briskly back to his garage at the far end of the pit lane, and well, he doesn't seem too upset with himself. Jacques Villeneuve again almost confirming that his intent to stay with BAR for a further year as per contract is his preferred option, and maybe he knows something about BAR for 2003 that has encouraged him to be so positive.
Interesting to look at the list there. Normally we get used on the first session seeing all the Bridgestone tired cars featuring in the top 10. Slightly different this time. The Michelin tyres showing quite well in this first session. Now, I don't know whether that means anything for the weekend or not. It is a difference to our normal standings. Takuma Sato 10th fastest, just ahead of Fisichella and Heidfeld. And I suppose that's a little surprise to see Heidfeld and Massa down in 12th and 14th, because they normally tend to be pretty quick in this first session.
But their car did not look a particularly easy car. We saw both Massa and Heidfeld struggling in certain parts of the track, and particularly even through the high-speed corners where you'd expect the car to look more stable. They were just drifting away. That grip was not there.
Further down behind them, Mika Salo was the man who did the least laps of everyone who went out. He only did 9 laps, and part of that, of course, was because they had to change the steering arm on the Toyota after the incident between himself and Takuma Sato. So that's the first free practice. Let's take a look back over the highlights.